thefourpersons.com. The truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help us, God.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first little programming note before we go any further. In 2 days,
We can't hear you over the bumper music.
now, can you hear me now?
Barely.
Let me turn the microphone up. Okay, we're back.
Good morning.
Good morning. A little programming note. Podbean is going to end their ability to live stream. Does that mean that the four persons and John Benko and Richard Pettis are going to stop doing live streams? No. You can't keep a good man down, and you ain't going to keep us down, are you?
Mm-mm.
So
No way. We do too much good work together.
Right. All it means is that we're going to find another way to adapt and overcome, and we've already been discussing, different ways that we're going to do that. So the four persons show will continue. Don't worry. How are you doing this morning, Richard?
I am doing well. How are you this morning?
Doing good. So wanted to talk to you about something that where your background in the legal profession really comes into play here. Okay.
Yes, sir.
And full disclosure, Richard will say that his familiarity with this particular case is not on the same level as mine. He just,
Nowhere
hasn't
near.
heard as much about it. But we can talk about the facts of this case and discuss it in terms of what we both know about the law and what we both know about the system of justice upon which our country is founded. There are certain guiding principles that are supposed to guide our legal procedures and professions. Is that fair enough?
That is a true statement.
Okay. All right. And one of the founding principles of our legal system of justice in this country is what we call the presumption of innocence. So let's use that as a starting point. In your own words, explain to our audience what the presumption of innocence means.
Well, on paper, it means that no one is guilty until they are proved to be guilty. Everyone is presumed to be innocent until the state makes a proper case by which there is no doubt as to the guilt of certain individuals who are brought
Right.
before the court.
And the standard that the law prescribes is beyond a reasonable doubt. And this is how they conclude this. Okay? Beyond a reasonable doubt means that a reasonable person would be confident that the guilt of the defendant has been proven.
Yes.
Am I describing it fairly?
That's pretty close to fair, yes.
Okay. All right. And, I don't want to get crazy here like some people get, because beyond a reasonable doubt does not mean beyond any shadow of a speck of a doubt. Okay. means beyond a reasonable doubt, the doubt that a normal person would have. In other words, if you are 99.9999999% sure that the person is guilty, then that's beyond reasonable doubt.
Yeah.
Okay? If you're only 40% sure that they're guilty, there's doubt there. There's reasonable doubt there. Okay?
Correct.
Now, the particular case that we're talking about here, and full disclosure, I don't know any of the parties. I've never spoken to any of the parties. I don't know the defendant. I don't know any of the members of the defendant. Okay? I didn't know the victims. I don't know any of the members of the victims. I didn't know the judge, the prosecution, police officers. None of these people I have ever met or spoken to. Okay? The closest that I've come, and this is only basically in the last couple of weeks, is that I've had some exchanges, some online exchanges, arguments, if you will, with members of the family of one of the deceased. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
This has basically been the crux of the argument, Richard. Okay? Now, I want to start here because there's been a lot of things that have been said about me. You've known me for quite a while now,
Oh, yeah.
and you know what kind of a person I am.
Yes,
All
I
right?
do.
And I'm a flawed sinner just like anybody else, and I really am. The worst mistake that you could make about me is to come to the conclusion that I got it all together, because Richard will tell you I don't. I struggle every single day. Okay,
As do I.
yeah. But is this a fair statement? John Benko is a compassionate person. John
Yes,
Benko is not heartless to people suffering.
that would be a very true statement.
Yeah. So when I talk to these families of the victims, there needs to be a separation in the conversation. Okay. You can't have the spillover from one to the other. All right. And Richard, the first thing about this situation, this was a car wreck. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
On July 31st, 2022, a vehicle with three people into it crashed into the side of a building at approximately 100 miles an hour. Two of the passengers, two young men, Dominic Russo and Davion Flanagan, were dead on arrival. Okay. The third person, who was the driver, okay,
Mm-hmm.
was barely clinging to life. Her blood oxygen saturation level was 80%. You know, anything about blood oxygen saturation, 80% is like you're
Really
at
bad.
you're at death's door, okay? Um, her lactic acid levels, and I don't know that much about that or that science. I'm just reporting what I've heard, were also extremely elevated, off the chart. Um, she was found pinned under the side passenger side dashboard. Her body was on her side, and her head was pinned under the passenger side dashboard. Okay. Now
Mm.
her foot was still on the accelerator, but her foot was still on the accelerator because her foot was stuck in her shoe, and the shoe was wedged between the brake pedal and the gas pedal. Now, these are factual statements. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, people can draw whatever conclusions they can draw from, but what I'm giving you are factual statements that are not contested by either side.
Right.
Okay. When her body was removed, they had to bring in the jaws of life. Okay. And when her body was removed from the car, the shoe was still wedged between the brake pedal and the gas pedal so that the accelerator was still to the floor even after she was extracted from the car. The gas pedal did not pop back up because the shoe was holding it down.
Right.
Okay? She had multiple serious injuries. She required multiple surgeries. Her rehabilitation was long and painful and involved. Okay. Among the injuries that she had were broken ribs, okay, that were consistent with the position of the center console. All right. And she had a concussion that they determined was caused by the passenger side airbag.
Right.
Okay. So the conclusion that you draw from that, the medical conclusion that you draw from that, it's really inescapable, is that in order to have sustained those two particular injuries and to have been pinned under the passenger side dashboard, her body was on her side across that seat prior to impact. Would you agree with that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I absolutely would.
She wasn't thrown down in that position by the impact, because if she was, she wouldn't have broken ribs. She wouldn't have a concussion from the airbag. She had to have been in that position when the collision took place. And at any point, I really want you to be as honest as you can be, Richard. At any point, step in and correct me if you think that anything that I say here is incorrect. Okay?
Well, I don't think that anything you've said is incorrect, but I find it hard to believe that she's driving a car and her head is below the level of the dashboard.
Yeah, that's yeah, that's the first thing. So I told you about this new documentary that had been released. Okay,
You
and
did.
and this argument that I've had with Christine Russo, she's the sister of Dominic Russo, the victim. And again, I want to say my heart goes out to you and your family. I'm truly sorry at your loss, and I'm sure
As am I.
Richard would echo the same feelings. Okay,
Absolutely.
but I was arguing with them, and Becky Russo is the cousin, and I was arguing with them just the other day, and I said, and they told me I was crazy, they told me I was dumb, they told me I didn't know what I was talking about. I said, look, no matter what you say, okay, no matter what you say, Mackenzie Shirilla was not operating that vehicle when it hit the wall. And they come back and they say, oh, nobody even contested she was a driver. Everybody admits that she's a driver. She admits that she was a driver. I said, I didn't deny that she was the driver, Richard. Here's what I did. Here's what I denied. I denied that she was actually physically in control of the vehicle at the moment that it hit the wall. And the medical evidence, does it support my claim, or does it or is it against my claim?
It supports your claim.
Okay. So this is what the detective said in the Netflix documentary. Okay. And I'm going to back it up just a little bit to give you a little bit of background. Here's what happened. Here is what we know. I'm going to tell you what we know, and then I'll come back and we'll start to fill in the blanks. Okay. We know that Mackenzie Shirilla was driving that vehicle, and she took a fully in control turn off the Pearl Road onto Progress Drive, put her blinker on, proceeded at 35 miles an hour, the posted speed, and took a safe and totally in control turn off of Pearl Road onto Progress Drive. We know that because a surveillance camera at the intersection captures it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Nobody is contesting that at that time, at that point, Mackenzie Shirilla is driving the vehicle, okay, and in full control of the vehicle. All right. Progress Drive is about 7/10 of a mile long. Okay, so by my math, that's somewhere about 3,800 feet. That sound about right?
Sounds about right.
Yeah, about 3,800 feet in length. Okay, nearly 3/4 of the way down Progress Drive, something happened. Okay, and I say something happened because nobody can say with any kind of confidence what happened. Okay, something happened that caused the accelerator of the car to be mashed to the floor. Okay. Now, there's all kinds of conjecture as to what happened, what could have caused that. The accelerator could have been, she could have gotten frustrated at a slow moving or stopped vehicle in front of her and mashed the gas to go around it, or we don't know. I mean, this is all conjecture. Okay. Here's what we know something happened that caused the accelerator to get stuck to the floor. Once the accelerator got stuck to the floor, as we have already covered, okay, it was not able to pop back up because the shoe got wedged between the two pedals. The shoe got stuck.
Right.
Okay. Again, I'm not trying to say that I can prove, that she intended to mash the gas for a second to get around another car and then take her foot off the gas. And then when she attempted to take her foot off the gas, she wasn't able to. I'm just saying that is one of the many reasonable interpretations of the evidence. Here's what we know for a fact. We know for a fact that 3/4 of the way down Progress Drive, that car was doing 35 miles an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, there is a camera all the way at the end, almost all the way at the end of Progress Drive. Okay. Literally 5 seconds from the impact point. So it's the camera's all the way at the end. Okay. When the car passed that camera, it was doing about 100 miles an hour. Okay. Here's the thing that's really crazy, though. Again, I'm putting out evidence here that it's really hard to kind of sift through this evidence and say, okay, that's strange, that's bizarre. We're not sure what happened here. From the time that she turned onto Progress Drive off of Pearl Road to the time that she passed that camera all the way at the end, had she maintained her 35 miles per hour, it would have been about 60 seconds. It would have been about a minute between passing the two cameras. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
That's how. So, in other words, when she's turning on the Progress Drive, her expected arrival in front of the other camera would be about 60 seconds, about 1 minute. All right?
Okay.
She gets there about 10 seconds early. 10 seconds, Richard, not 30 seconds. Okay? Not 20 seconds, 10 seconds early. Okay? You know that we look up things on Grok all the time. We look up things on Grok, GBT. We don't write entire articles like some people we know. Okay?
Correct.
But we use it to help us research certain facts to fill in some of the blanks in our research, right?
Correct. We do.
So I asked Grok, how long does it take a Toyota Camry, 2018 Toyota Camry, to accelerate from 35 miles an hour to 100 miles an hour? And it told me that it took approximately 900 feet and it took approximately 9 seconds. 9.1 seconds was the number that it came up with.
Okay. That sounds
Okay.
that sounds reasonable.
So if her car arrived in front of that camera 10 seconds earlier than we would have expected it to, and it takes 9 seconds for that car to accelerate from 35 miles an hour to 100 miles an hour, whatever happened to cause that car to accelerate to that speed happened suddenly and quickly and at the end. In other words, she did not gradually speed up from 35 miles an hour to 100 miles an hour as soon as she started to turn on progress drive. Because if she'd have done that, she gets to the camera 20 seconds early. Okay. Maybe even 30 seconds early because she's going 100 miles an hour rather than 35 miles an hour. So she's doing more than twice the speed. Well, logic would dictate that if you're doing more than twice the speed, you're going to get there in half the time, right?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. So I marked it on the map. I marked off approximately 900 feet, just based on an estimate based on how long the road is. And I marked off about what 900 feet was, and that was almost like what you have in a NASCAR race, which you and I are NASCAR fans. Okay, almost like what you would refer to as a dog leg. So why don't you explain to our listeners what a dog leg is?
Something akin to a 85 to 90-degree turn.
Right. It's not a full turn. It's just basically just kind of an offset. Okay. It's just the road just tilts in one direction to give a wider angle. It gives a wider angle. And in NASCAR, it's because the cars are able to go through that dog leg to maintain more speed. Okay. Is that a fair comparison?
That is.
Okay. So there was a little almost like a dog leg. And then there's the final straightaway to the end of the road where T intersects with Alameda. And that dog leg was maybe 100 feet long, if that, perhaps less. So we have maybe 100 feet or less of dog leg, and then the rest of it is straightaway all the way to the end of Alameda.
Right.
The car left the road beyond Alameda, jumped the curb across the street, and then the car made a violent turn to the right. Okay. One of the things that they said in the trial was she drove the car straight into the building. Well, the crash data recorder disputes that. The last seconds, okay, the car turned violently to the right. And I'm talking about 90 degrees to the right. Okay. To the point where the car actually hit was in the offset of the building. Okay. So imagine you're looking at a building and the building runs straight across left to right. And then there's an offset towards you where the building juts out, and then the rest of the building runs left to right. You know
Hmm.
what I'm talking about the offset in the front of the building, right?
Right.
The car impacted on the inside of that offset. That was the impact point. Okay. So now that information that I just gave you, if you're examining that as a medical professional, as a forensic professional that's studying this accident, is that consistent with somebody deliberately driving straight into the building, or is that consistent with somebody taking an evasive action to try to avoid an accident?
It's consistent with somebody taking evasive maneuvers. Yes.
And yet they don't say that in the trial. In the trial, they literally said she drove the car straight into the building and no attempt was made in order to avoid the wreck. Now, I'm calling that a bald-faced lie. I don't know what your interpretation is, but I'm calling that a bald-faced lie. The evidence shows the contrary.
Well, but when she went jumping curbs, at what angle were the curbs set, and how would the car at that speed react to those curbs?
Yeah, and I'm sure all of that has to be taken into consideration. Okay, but the vehicle data box showed that somebody turned the steering wheel fully right. That's what the vehicle data box indicates. The car, they're not just saying the vehicle moved to the right, but there's somebody grabbed the steering wheel and moved it hard right. Okay.
Could it have been the front seat passenger?
Well, we're I'm glad that you brought that up because that's what we're going to get to here. Okay. Because that happens to actually be my hypothesis. Okay. Something else happened. Somebody was manically shifting the center console shifter from drive to neutral back and forth, trying to disengage the transmission. Okay. So now I want to put this in perspective, Richard. From the time that the car began to accelerate until the time that it impacted the wall of that building, the Plitko building, was 14 seconds. We're not talking about people that were wrestling with this car for a minute or 2 minutes. We're talking about 14 seconds for them to discover there's a problem, react to the problem, and achieve a result. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't enough. They were able to react. It's clear they took evasive action, but they were not able to stop the vehicle, unfortunately. Tragically. Okay? And if at any point do I sound like I'm being insensitive to the loss of 2 lives here? Because if I am, set me straight.
No, you're not
It's
being
horrific.
insensitive to the loss.
It's horrific what happened to these 2 young men, Richard. They died a horrible, terrifying. I'm sure that last 14 seconds was terrifying. Okay, and they died a horrible, violent death. And I don't know how you embellish on that. I don't know how you put that even stronger. But in the Netflix documentary, Richard, and I love how you came to this conclusion all on your own. I really love the fact that I didn't have to prompt you to this conclusion. You came to it all on your own based on what you're hearing, the evidence. Okay?
Yes.
So you are acting as a juror that says, here's the evidence. Well, this is what it suggests to me as the most plausible or one of the most plausible outcomes. And the detectives said this in the Netflix documentary. And the family of the victim is pushing back. She posted on her YouTube channel today that she's going to do a full podcast debunking the lies of the Netflix documentary. Now, I watched the Netflix documentary and it was straight down the middle. They weren't advocates for one side, they weren't advocates for the other side. They said, here's the facts and draw your own conclusions. That's all you can ask of a documentary, right? That's what you would want a
That's
documentary
it.
to do. You looked at the
That's
evidence.
all you can ask.
When they interviewed the detectives said, well, we think that it was Dominic and Davion, the 2 young men, that grabbed the steering wheel and grabbed the gear shift, trying to save their own lives. Okay? And that would explain why both of them had no seatbelt on. They jumped out of their seats to try to get control of that vehicle. All right? And in this sense, I agree with the investigators. I agree with what the police officers are saying here. And it sounds like you do as well. Am I reaching, or do you think that that's true, or do you think it's just one of the possible conclusions?
I think it's the most likely conclusion.
It's where the evidence seems to point, isn't it?
It is.
Okay. So now, here's the question that I have for you. Okay. So we know that the vehicle data recorder, a lot of people don't know this, but the vehicle data recorder only saves the information from the point of impact backwards 5 seconds. Okay.
Okay.
So here's what we know happened in the last 5 seconds. All right. Number one, the gas pedal was pushed to the floor. Number two, the vehicle was traveling 100 miles per hour. Number three, the brakes were never engaged. Number four, the vehicle took a hard right turn and the gear shift was manipulated from drive to neutral back to drive. All of that happened in the last 5 seconds before impact. Those are not John Benko's opinions. These are facts. They're not disputed.
Right.
Okay? So what we can do then is we can say, well, what do these facts tell me? Okay? What conclusions do these facts allow me to come to, and what more facts would I need to know in either to be able to come to a firmer conclusion? Fair enough?
Fair enough.
Okay. So this is the question that I have. Okay? And put your take off your lawyer's hat and put on your investigator's hat for just a second here.
Okay.
And imagine that you just gave me the information that I just gave you. Imagine you're giving me that information. Here's what we know. Last 5 seconds, vehicle was going 100 miles an hour, no brakes, hard right turn, gear shift manipulated, okay, hit the wall at 100 miles an hour. We believe that the two other passengers in the vehicle manipulated the steering wheel and the shifter. So you've just given me that information. So then I say, okay, Mr. Pettis, so what you're telling me is that at some point, the two other passengers of the vehicle were, to the extent that anyone was in control of the vehicle, which obviously no one was in control of the vehicle, but to the extent that anyone was in control of the vehicle, it was the two other passengers of the vehicle that took control of that vehicle at some point. Mr. Pettis, is that a true statement or is that a false statement?
It's got to be a true statement.
Okay. So now my next question for you, Mr. Pettis, can you establish, moving backwards from the point of impact, how many seconds do we go back before those two gentlemen attempted to take control of that vehicle? Okay. And then if you can answer me that question, then tell me why. What happened that made them realize they had to take control of that vehicle? Can you answer those two questions?
Well, not without putting some potential information out there that can't be proved.
Yeah. You're Richard, you're making my case for me. You're
Well,
making my case for
I
me because
mean,
what's
the
that?
first question that comes to my mind is what happened to the driver that she became incapacitated and these guys had to try to take control of the vehicle.
Right, right. So their conclusion is that Mackenzie was awake and alert and operating the vehicle to the very end until these other two guys took evasive maneuvers to try to take control of the vehicle. Okay. So I would say two things about that. Number one, okay, that's your theory. That's great. That's conjecture. That's great. Okay. Number one, where's your evidence? Can you prove that hypothesis on the nature of evidence? The camera that the car passed in front of you could not see inside the car. The windows were tinted. Nobody has any idea what was happening inside that vehicle except that the steering wheel was grabbed and the gear shift was grabbed. And we know that happened 5 seconds in. We don't know if it happened before then because the data recorder only records data for 5 seconds. Okay? Can you demonstrate to me that Mackenzie was controlling that vehicle and that the two other passengers were trying to fight to take the car, or control of the car away from her because she was trying to crash the vehicle? Right? That is one of the hypotheses. All right? Mr. Pettis, can you prove that hypothesis on the basis of evidence?
Not the evidence that we have.
Right. So it's just conjecture at this point, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Was she trying to commit suicide? I don't
Right.
know.
Right. Okay. So then, Mr. Pettis, based on conjecture, we have two possible theories of what happened here. Okay? Tell me if these are not the two most plausible working theories that we have. We have theory A: Mackenzie was deliberately and in full control, fully alert, deliberately trying to crash that car into a building when the two other passengers intervened, grabbed the steering wheel, grabbed the gear shift to wrestle control away from her to keep her from crashing the vehicle. Okay? That is scenario A. And
Mm-hmm.
scenario A would be premeditated murder.
Yes.
Okay? Now, scenario B: the passenger or the driver had in some way become incapacitated, okay, and the two passengers realized that she was unable to pilot the vehicle, and then they panicked and tried to wrestle control of the vehicle. Okay, so those are the two scenarios. Am I correct, Mr. Pettis, in painting what the two possible scenarios are?
Well, there's a third possible scenario,
Okay.
and that is that only one of the two passengers tried to take control of the vehicle.
Okay. And I thought I said Davion and or Dominic. I thought I said that.
Yeah. Okay. Saying it
Okay.
that way, then yeah, those are the two real possibilities.
Those are the two real possibilities. Okay. Now, Mr. Pettis, I will agree that I cannot prove my theory beyond a reasonable doubt. I can't prove it. But would you agree that you can't prove yours either? Is that, again, I'm asking you to answer this like you're one of the investigators. Can you prove your theory?
No, not beyond a reasonable doubt, but we're talking about a civil case. And in a civil case, the burden of proof is different.
No,
It's
we're
not
talking
beyond
about
a reasonable doubt, it's a preponderance of the evidence.
no, we're talking about a criminal case here.
Okay,
She
criminal
was
case, then it's beyond a reasonable doubt.
okay. Yeah, she was criminally charged and convicted. Okay, so now, Mr. Pettis, if we have two theories on what caused that vehicle to crash, and one of them makes her guilty, and the other exonerates her, but we can't prove either theory. In the eyes of justice, that we started this program by talking about Mr. Pettis, doesn't the tie go to the runner here, so to speak?
Tie goes to the runner.
Okay.
You got a 50-50. You got a 50-50. Really, and there could be a third hypothesis. And maybe that's that one of the two passengers tried to cause the crash and she was trying to uncrash it.
Wow. It's amazing how you keep making my arguments for me before I even make them. It's amazing. Richard, tell our audience that you're not familiar with this case, right?
I'm not in the least familiar with this case. When they start talking about legal news, I turn off the TV because I deal with legal issues all day, every day.
I know, but what's fascinating is you've been familiar with this case now for 41 minutes that we've been on the air,
That's about
and
right.
you're coming to all of the same conclusions that I am. Okay, not by my magnificent power of persuasion, which doesn't exist. Okay, but I'm presenting the evidence and asking you, okay, Richard, where does this evidence lead? And you're like, well, it seems to lead in this direction. Okay. So now let me ask you the next question, Mr. Investigator. Again, we're doing a little bit of a cosplay here. Richard is playing the investigator here. Okay. Just for the sake of argument. Mr. Investigator, we you've already conceded that if it's undeterminable, the tie goes to the runner, right?
Correct.
Okay. Now, in terms of which explanation is more plausible, your argument or my argument, okay? If Mackenzie Shirilla is upright, aware of her surroundings, in control, ability to make react and to act and react, make decisions, everything that we're talking about in terms of piloting a vehicle, okay? Can you explain to me how she is found in the vehicle laying across the passenger seat with broken ribs, with a concussion, with her head pinned underneath the passenger side dashboard, with a blood oxygen saturation level of 80%, the lactic acid level off the charts? Does that sound to you like a person who is upright, alert, and in possession of all her faculties? Or does it sound
No,
like to you someone who is incapacitated, on her side, experiencing a medical emergency? What does the evidence point to here, Richard?
well, it points to somebody suffering a medical emergency. Now, what was the onset? Did she somehow get clubbed by one of the two guys?
Okay.
Popped across the back of the head?
So it was introduced in the testimony at the trial, and the judge disregarded it. Okay. She had been medically diagnosed with a condition of POTS. Okay, this is a condition that can cause seizures, blackouts, amnesia. Okay, and there was a professional neurologist that says that what happened in that car is completely consistent with a person suffering a POTS seizure, a medical episode. This was argued in court. During the trial, during the trial, there was a car accident in Garfield, New Jersey. Now, what does a car accident in Garfield, New Jersey have to do with something that happened in Strongsville, Ohio? Well,
Clearly, the driver was suffering a POTS episode.
this driver suffered a medical seizure And get this, the seizure caused her body to spasm in such a way that it caused her foot to press the accelerator to the floor.
Mm-hmm.
And the investigators and the police found her not guilty because her action of pushing the gas pedal to the floor was an involuntary seizure reaction, and that she was found not guilty in this accident by reason that she suffered a medical episode and that caused this crash. Doesn't that sound exactly what happened in the accident of Mackenzie Shirilla?
100%. Now, my next question becomes this. If she had a diagnosis of POTS, what was she doing behind the wheel of a car?
That's a very good question. That's a very good question, and her mother was asked that question, okay, in court, and the answer was, well, they always said these are things that could happen, but we had never seen any indication that they had happened while she was operating a vehicle, which tells me that her mother is just not a good person. Okay, you
Yeah.
put your own daughter in danger. Your daughter had experienced seizures. Your daughter had a medical condition that had danger written all over it, and yet you allowed your daughter to go out and get a driver's license. You helped her get a driver's license. Um, I think, could you charge criminal negligence on the mother's part?
Absolutely.
I think that would be fair, wouldn't it?
I think it would be more than fair.
Yeah. At the time of the accident, Mackenzie Shirla was 17 years old. We have a word for that. It starts with the letter M. What is the word?
Hang on a second. Brooklyn, stop. Malfeasance.
She was 17 years old, and there's a word for that. It starts with M.
Minor.
Minor. She was a minor. Okay? Well, guess what? This is the other twist. She was charged as an adult. They tried her as an adult.
Because the case involved the deaths of two others.
Yeah.
And she didn't have a very good lawyer.
She had a horrible lawyer. And her lawyer, inexplicably, for reasons that I cannot imagine, chose a bench trial over a jury trial. Can you, in your legal expertise, can you give any idea as to why that would be the logical move here?
He was a public defender and had what he thought was a bad case. Didn't want to be bothered with it.
So, in other words, what you're saying is he kind of mailed it in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because if you're acting in Mackenzie's case, and again, I'm just asking your opinion, Richard, and you've been in the profession of law for a number of years, so you've
30.
seen a lot of cases, okay? You've had a lot of firsthand experience that a lot of us have not had, okay? But I'm just giving you my opinion, and you can tell me if my opinion is right or my opinion is wrong. But to me, based on the evidence that I've just expressed to you, you put this case in front of a jury of 12 people, there's not a chance in the world they convict. There's not a chance in the world you get 12 people. I'm sorry, what'd you say?
I said I concur. There's not a jury that's going to convict a case like this.
And this is the argument that I've had with people. I've had people tell me, well, I don't know. It's just kind of funny. I kind of think she might have did it. Okay. And I say, I can respect that. Okay. I can respect your right to have that view. But Richard, we started the show by asking, is kind of sort of, I think she might have kind of sort of did it. Is that the burden? Is that the threshold we need to meet here?
No, it's not even close. The
So
threshold that you got to meet is, I believe, with 99.99999% confidence that she did it.
yeah, and I don't know how you can get I don't know how you can even get to 50% in this case.
Mm-mm.
I don't know how you can get to 50%. Say, I would say if you're above 25% confidence that she did this deliberately, okay? So then the more that so this is what I was confronted with when I first, and full disclosure, it was about a year ago. It was actually May 19th of last year, okay, that someone online asked me to watch this Facebook documentary that they did. So we're May 16th. It's pretty close to a year. Okay.
Yeah.
And I watched this documentary and I'm confronted with all this stuff. And I'm like, wait a minute, this seems like the most bizarre conviction that I've ever seen in my life. Okay.
Come here, bro.
And they started coming up with all of these claims and all of these scenarios and all of this conjecture. Okay. And it turns out that every single thing that they said, every single conjecture that they made was either demonstrably untrue or, complete conjecture. You're guessing, okay? You're groping in the dark here, okay?
Right.
One of the things that they suggested is that she specifically chose this route, that she knew it was off the beaten path, that, there wouldn't be people bothering her if she chose this path, okay? And that's why she chose this path to drive down in order to murder these two victims,
But why
okay?
would she want to murder these two victims?
Well, yeah, I'm going to get to that in a minute. Yeah, that's the other thing, okay? And part of it goes back to something you brought up just a few minutes ago that we're gonna bring up, something that Richard volunteered, not something that I led Richard to, but something that Richard volunteered as something that needs to be looked at. Okay, so people who were at a sleepover. Okay, they'd spent the night at some friend's house. It was a sleepover.
Mm-hmm.
People, when they left there, said, well, they were going to this place, such and such a place, to pick up some food. Okay.
Okay.
And when you do a Google Maps search of how to get from where they started to where they were going, it gives you three alternative routes. And one of the three alternative routes, one of the most plausible alternative routes, was exactly the route that they took. Okay. And they said, well, her car was pinged there 2 weeks ago. So that proves that she was planning this. Evel Knievel couldn't make that leap. Okay. And in the interview, they released some of the interviews between the investigators and Christine Russo, the mother. And Christine Russo said something very interesting. She says, don't let Mackenzie tell you that she wasn't familiar with that route because she traveled that route all the time. And then in the court, they completely flipped it around. Oh, that way it was a new route. It was a route she wasn't familiar with, but she planned that route in order to do this despicable act. All the evidence pointed to the fact, and if you could look at a map of Strongsville, and we posted it on the four person. Okay, so I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna try to break this down for you. Okay, so imagine north to south. Okay, and
Mm-hmm.
imagine like a the right hand of a rectangle. Okay, and you
Mm-hmm.
want to get all the way from the top right axis of the rectangle, the top right corner of the rectangle, all the way to the bottom left corner of the rectangle. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Now, you could travel straight down the right side of the rectangle and then straight across the bottom, right to left of the rectangle, and that would get you to your destination, right?
Yes.
But if you had a path that cut through the middle, that was approximately cut through that cut the triangle and the rectangle in half, okay, by going to a road right to left and then straight down, okay, so that you took approximately 1.4 miles off of your trip, which route would you naturally take?
I would take the trip that took the 1.4 miles off.
You take the shortcut, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And there are people that testified, what are you talking about here? This is insanity. Everybody knows that's the route that you cut through Strongsville. Everybody knows that. That's the shortcut that everybody takes. So they introduced that as evidence. They also introduced evidence, okay, that Mackenzie had threatened that she was going to crash the car. That she had threatened that she was going to crash the car. This is going to blow you away. That
Okay.
claim was from one person. Okay? His name was Christopher Martin. He was a convicted felon and he was living in the Russo home. He was living in the home of the mother of the victims. And he went to the police and said, well, I was talking to Dominic and I overheard her say, I'm going to crash this car. Okay.
Okay. Now,
And
what was his conviction for?
I don't know. I don't know.
Because if
Okay.
it was a crime for honesty or involving moral turpitude, then his statement should have been kicked right away.
Should have been inadmissible.
Well, yeah,
Or at a minimum, it should have been taken with a high degree of skepticism, right?
it's correct.
Okay.
Especially if it was a crime involving honesty or moral turpitude.
Yeah. So when they recovered the text messages that were sent back and forth on the phone, okay, because he was sent by Christine Russo to go pick up Dominic because of this incident that happened 2 weeks before the fatal crash.
Uh huh.
Okay. And he says he overheard Mackenzie say, I'll crash this vehicle. Okay. Here's the problem. The actual text messages that went back and forth between Mackenzie and Christine Russo that were delivered as evidence by the cell phone provider,
Mm
actual screen captures of the actual text messages were to the tune of, you need to come pick up your son. He just grabbed my steering wheel and tried to crash my car. He's out of control. I don't feel safe being in the vehicle with him. You need to come get him now. And Christine Russo's reaction was, oh no, was not, oh no, you're lying. I don't believe that. It was, okay, calm down. I'm sending Hench. Okay. They called him Hench, short for henchman.
hmm. Mm hmm.
That all right there should speak to what kind of a person that we're talking about here.
Yeah. Now, was
I mean,
Henchman his name?
was that?
Was Henchman his name?
No, no. His name was Christopher Martin. They called him the henchman. That was their nickname for him.
Ah, yeah, it speaks to kind of his caliber of personhood.
Right. She said, calm down. I'm sending Hinch to pick him up. I'm sure he didn't really mean it. You're overreacting, blah, 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 blah. This speaks to what you said a minute ago about scenario number 3. is that it was actually Dominic who was trying to crash the car. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
They turned that around completely and introduced as evidence that she had motive and intent to crash the car. They never produced any evidence to substantiate that. It was based solely on one person who was a convicted felon. And listen to this, not only was a convicted felon, but he was living in the basement of the home of the mother of the victim. So now you have potential conflict of interest here.
Big time.
In other words, you want to be homeless, and you know why he was living in her home? Because of his past legal record. Nobody would touch him in terms of providing housing to him. So she
Mm.
took him into her home. Okay. So now, how about you're going to go down and you're going to tell the police A, B, C, and D, and if you don't, you're going to be homeless. You're not going to have a place to live.
Mm.
Okay. Can you see where there would be a conflict of interest here?
Oh, big time.
If you're an investigator, don't you have a responsibility to evaluate that conflict of interest?
I would think you would.
Okay. In the Netflix documentary, for the first time, we got to hear from friends of Mackenzie, people who are actually friends of Mackenzie and Dominic and Davion, and they said, yeah, they had the occasional little spats and fights that everybody has, but it was quickly over and they were back together. And that morning, there was every indication that everything was fine. This was a tight knit group of 5 people. They loved each other. They adored each other. They did everything together every day. And Mackenzie and Dominic were, were planning to be married. And the investigators put this out as this was some kind of a toxic relationship, and that Mackenzie was afraid that Dominic was getting ready to leave her. Again, no evidence produced to substantiate any of this. So the motive was created out of thin air. Another thing that the judge introduced is that because this happened only days before her 18th birthday, then that means that she chose the date to do this only days before her 18th birthday.
The judge suggested this?
Judge suggested this in the trial. Based on what? It's almost like the verdict was predetermined, and let's work back from the guilty verdict, and then we'll figure the evidence out as we get there. Okay. Do you know what the last name of the judge was, Richard?
Russo.
Yep. Isn't that amazing?
That's kind of shocking.
Okay. Now, I have not seen any absolute confirmation that she was related to the family of the victim, but I haven't seen anything to the contrary either. And that's something that they should have come out with.
Yeah, with a name like Russo, Russo is not that common a name.
It should have been established right from day one. Um, Ladies and
Again,
gentlemen,
bad lawyering on the part of the defense counsel.
yeah, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, it needs to be understood that the judge, even though she has the same last name as the victim, is not related and will maintain her impartiality. She had a responsibility to say something like that, right?
I would argue she did. And I would argue that as a lawyer, and judges are lawyers, um, she had an absolute obligation to avoid even the appearance of impropriety.
Exactly. Even the appearance of a conflict of interest. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't see motive. She loved the young man. She loved Davion. They were good friends. Okay. They were part of this group of 4 or 5 people. They were okay. In fact, Davion had already arranged for a ride home from somebody else, and at the last minute said, "No, no, no. You know what? I'm going to ride with Mackenzie and Dominic. I'm going to ride with them." Does that sound like somebody that thought the driver was a threat?
No.
So now, after this video, this documentary was released, um, I posted what my thoughts were on the article, and I see that you pinged on it, so I think that you read the article that I wrote about my feelings about the Netflix documentary, and
Actually, I
that
didn't yet,
oh well,
because I
I
knew that you wanted to do a live stream
reaction,
about it, and
yeah,
so I wanted to be, since I didn't know enough about the case to sound intelligent. I didn't want to read anything that might
persuade you one way or
influence
the
my
other.
opinion.
Okay, that's fair enough. I'll reiterate what my take on the documentary was. I thought it was very well done. I thought it was extremely well done, um, because it didn't advocate for one side or the other. And I attempted to do that in this show that we've done here today. Is present okay. I showed you what my conclusions were, but when I presented the evidence, I didn't color any of the evidence one way or another. I said, okay, this is what we know. It's not disputed. This is fact. And then I made the separation and say, okay, these are the conclusions that I draw from these facts. Is that a fair way of how I've comported myself today, Richard?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
So I made no bones about the fact that I thought the documentary was done very well. It was impartial. Okay. But because it was impartial, it presented a lot of evidence that you didn't get to hear before. A lot of evidence that wasn't in the trial. All right. And a lot of evidence that make you scratch your head and say, you know what? This isn't as clear as they want you to believe it is. They've been telling you that it's clear cut and this girl is guilty of murder. I don't know about that. Okay, is the conclusion that you're going to come to when you watch the movie. So, by the way, the two Christine Russos, I've been talking about two Christine Russos. One of them is the
Hmm.
mother, and the other is the daughter. Okay, and amazingly enough, it's not the actual mother. Christine Russo, the older, is not actually the mother of Christine Russo, the younger. It's her stepmother. The father was married twice. So the fact that they're Christine Russo and Christine Russo is just coincidence. They're not actually biological mother and daughter. Okay? Christine Russo, the daughter, has started a podcast and she calls it The Big Sister Unhinged. And I have had several interactions with her and her cousin Becky, who is constantly on the show. And they have insulted me. They have said things about me that I can't even repeat. Okay. Based on the fact that I say, look, I'm sorry. I'm grieving for two victims here. But I look at this evidence, and this evidence doesn't get me to a murder conviction. I'm sorry. I'm sorry if that offends you. I'm sorry if that upsets you. But if I'm sitting on a jury based on the evidence that I've seen and the evidence that I presented, Richard, I'm sorry. I can't. Don't ask me to sign up for a murder conviction because I can't do it. It sounds to me like you're in the same place I am.
Yes.
This is what Christine Russo posted today on her Big Sister program. Quote, "Hi, everyone. I'll be going live for a 2-hour special to completely debunk the Netflix commentary. I'll be exposing all the lies and letting the people know the truth. Please join me on YouTube, in TikTok at The Big Sister Unhinged. Feel free to pass this flyer around all over the internet like you have been doing. I appreciate you all so much. Share it to your story, share it to your page, and you can share it to other people's posts as a flyer, and then keep tagging my podcast page on Facebook. Thank you so much, guys. Unquote. Your thoughts?
Um, well, it bothers me that she thinks that she knows everything because clearly she doesn't. Um, she's clearly biased, and the fact that she feels like she needs to make a flyer and have everybody pass it around the internet is overestimating her own
Important.
self-importance.
It's amazing, Richard, because once again, you've made the exact same arguments that I've been making. Because Christine and Becky first told me, look, all we want you to do is look at the evidence objectively. I said, okay, fair enough. I said, fair enough. I said, I'm a reasonable person. Okay. And you and I have had on this program, we've had people with all kinds that have been through all kinds of traumas and tragedies. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
One of the people that we had on the show was Tony Montalto.
Yep.
Okay. Well, here's the situation with Tony Montalto. There is no doubt that was murder.
Yes.
Not even a question. Okay. And it was not only murder, but it was murder done in a grotesque and sadistic and heinous way.
Yes.
Okay. That's a total different situation than what we have here. Is there doubt here, Richard? There's all
There's
kinds
none
of
of
doubt.
doubt here.
There's all kinds of doubt. Now, can I say with 100%, absolute 100% conviction, without any shred of a speck of doubt, that Mackenzie Shrilla is not guilty of what she did? I can't.
No.
But I'm not saying it wouldn't be possible to get me there. Okay. And this is what I said to Christine and Becky. I said, okay, all right. I said, if you want me to get me there to where I say, okay, all right, I see it now. I see it now. She's guilty. If you want to get me there, I said, you're going to have to do it with evidence. So stop all this crap talk about how much you hated Mackenzie and how horrible of a person she was and how everyone hated her in the town and her parents are this and her parents are that. I don't know Mackenzie's parents from Adam and Eve. Okay. So you're going to get me absolutely nowhere there. If you want to prove to me that this person is guilty of this crime, all right, I need three things: motive, intent, opportunity. That's what I need. Demonstrate to me motive, intent, opportunity. Anything unfair about what I'm asking here?
No. And in
Nathan,
fact, I'll go so far as to tell the Russo ladies, Christine and Becky, I haven't made a decision on the case. I'm a blank slate as far as the case comes. Y'all want to try and convince me? I'm happy to come on your show and give you a chance.
or you come on ours. We can do it either way.
Yeah, or all three of y'all come on ours. We can do it either way,
Yep.
and we're happy to.
Yeah. Okay.
But
So
I'm a blank slate. I know very little about the case.
so we're not telling you that you can't convince us. But what we are telling you is that this is what you need to do in order to convince us.
Yeah, we
Okay.
need motive, opportunity,
And intent.
and intent.
Yeah. Okay. And if they come out and they show somebody uncovered a video of Mackenzie saying, tomorrow I'm going to drive a car into a wall, I'm going to kill both of them. Hey, okay, I'm on board with you. I'm
Yeah,
on board with you. Then I'm saying, okay, she's where she needs to be.
But on the other hand, if you come out shooting at us and saying that we don't know what we're talking about, that's going to tell us something too.
Mm-hmm.
And just so that y'all know, my last name is spelled Pettys. So if I see anything come up about my name from y'all and it's negative, all offers and bets are off the table.
Yeah. They actually suggested, Becky Russo actually suggested that my interest in this case is that somehow, in some way, I have a fetish for 17-year-old girls, and that I'm thinking that if I come out in her defense, I might have a chance of scoring with her. That's disgusting. Okay.
Very disgusting, because that is nothing like you.
That's character assassination, is what that is.
Yeah.
So I ask you for evidence, and you respond with character assassination. Okay.
And at this point, she's also what, 23, 24 years old?
The accident was in July of 2022. So, a few days after the crash, she would have turned 18. Okay.
That was 6 years ago. No,
So,
4 years
August.
ago. So she's 21.
Yeah.
And Wikipedia points out that the judge was Nancy Margaret Russo.
Yeah.
And so, you know,
Are you there? Richard? Richard, can you hear me? All right. Looks like I lost Richard. Richard, can you try to reconnect? See if you can reconnect. Okay. So there was the next thing that they did on their podcast. I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to reconnect with Richard. The next thing that they did on their podcast was just like really strange, really bizarre. All right, let me message him and see if he can reconnect. All right. Give us just a second, folks. Technology is working against us here. Well, it looks like we lost Richard, and it doesn't look like we're going to be able to get him back. So I'm just trying to. I don't know what happened here, but I think we've got enough to end. Oh, here, Richard, can you hear me?
now apparently my internet
Unmute.
connection went out for a minute.
All right, I got you here. Okay. All right.
So
So the dreaded
anyway,
glitch.
let me finish what I was saying to the Russo ladies. One
Yeah.
thing y'all are going to need to be able to explain is the familiar relation between Nancy Margaret Russo and your branch of the Russo family. Russo is not.
And Richard, and I'm going to be honest with you, we shouldn't have to fish for that. We
No, we
shouldn't have to
shouldn't.
fish for that. That's something that should have been volunteered. They should have come out and said, hey, we just want to clear the air here. There's no relation here. Okay. You know, and sometimes that happens. Sometimes you get two people that are last name, uh, and they're not related, and that's fine. That happens. But we shouldn't have to fish for that. That's something they should have volunteered. Am I right?
That's absolutely correct.
Okay. So after Becky and Christine promised to me, well, keep watching our podcast. We're going to prove to you, we're going to show you the evidence that proves that blah, 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 blah. You're going to think I'm making this part up, but I'm not. You can go back and look on her podcast and see. This is what they actually did in the very next episode. They posted a video that was taken off of one of these channels that replays events or whatever. Somebody, there's no limit to what you can do today with audio and video technology and AI. It's some of the stuff is so realistic you can't tell the true from the fake. Right? Is that a fair statement?
That's a very fair statement.
And some of these people are very, very good at this AI stuff. I'm not. Okay, I'm strictly an amateur. But there are some people that are off the chart good at what they're able to produce. And I mean, they're just plain talented. Okay. She produced a video from one of these channels and purported it to be the actual original video of the arrest of Mackenzie Shirilla. And for all I know, she may honestly actually believe that it's the actual original untampered with video. She may actually believe that. And it may actually be true. I don't know. Okay. She plays the video. And at one point, after the police put the handcuffs on or something like that, you hear a little noise in the background, a little indecipherable noise in the background. Okay. To me, it sounds something along the lines of the air brakes on a truck or something like that. Okay. You know, that
Mm-hmm.
little hiss that you get the air brakes on a truck.
Yes.
Okay. That's what it sounded to me like. I'm not sure. I have no idea. But they play the audio and they elevate the volume on it. And they suggest over and over again that it's a voice saying, she killed us. She killed us. Okay? And they're actually
Okay.
insisting on this program that it's the voice of Dominic from beyond the grave saying, as Mackenzie was arrested, whispering, she killed us. Okay? I went back there and I said, look, you need to take this down. I said, now I'm a religious person and I believe that things can happen beyond the grave. But if you're claiming something like that, you better have some kind of evidence. And if
Yeah.
you are hanging your case on that, most people are going to say, okay, you're off your nut. Okay.
Yeah.
I said, you don't understand what you're doing by putting something like that out is you're assassinating your own credibility.
Mm-hmm.
Because somebody claiming that a voice from Dominic from beyond the grave said she killed us, and that's your case? That's your argument? Are you serious? I mean, I can't even believe that they seriously did that. And I confronted them with this. And I said, look, I'm trying to help you here. I'm trying to be constructive here. If we want to have an adult conversation, you would have come across as a credible party in this dialogue. You need to take this down. She responded with hatred and venom and how dare you, it's my effing show and I'll put whatever I want on my effing show and blah 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 blah. I said, yeah, that's true. It's your show. You do you.
And it's your credibility.
but don't expect to be taken seriously. Okay? Because at that point, now you just admitted 5 minutes ago, Richard, you're a totally objective person. Okay? You're
Mhm.
looking at this, you haven't made up your mind one way or the other. You're looking at this as, okay, what does the evidence point to? You see something like that. What is your conclusion?
My conclusion is, what do these people need to do? What's their end game to even claim that that's the voice of Dominic saying she killed us? That doesn't prove anything. It what it proves is that you've caused yourself to hear what you want to hear.
Right, right. And again, you made exactly the argument that I made. You made exactly the argument that I made. I said, now here's what I think that, here's why I think that you hear that. Because when I hear it, you can bend your mind into enough of a direction that kind of sort of sounds like that's what happens here. You can convince yourselves of a lot of things. Okay. The Beatles made an entire career off of this.
Yeah,
Putting their,
I was going to point that out, that you can play Strawberry Fields Forever backwards all you want, and you're going to hear Paul is dead, I buried Paul, but the funny thing is it's not an English accent.
yeah. So what you're doing is you're injecting something that you want to be reality into the reality. And I said, Christine and Becky, I said, here's the irony. The irony is you constantly keep telling me that I can't be objective. I don't have a dog in this hunt, Richard.
Yeah.
They do. They lost a brother, they lost a cousin. Okay. That's an emotional loss. And I feel for them. I do. Okay. But to tell me that they're completely objective, no. You lost your little brother and somebody has to pay for it. I'm hurting because I don't have a brother anymore. Somebody's responsible. I want somebody to pay for this. That's where you are. That's not an objective position. Okay. And I can't honestly say that if the situation were reversed, I can't honestly say for 100% sure I wouldn't be in the same position you are. That's an emotional response. Okay. I, on the other hand, never met Dominic Russo. Never met him.
Mm-mm.
Never met Davion Flanagan. Never met Mackenzie Shirilla. Wouldn't be able to pick her out of a police lineup. Wouldn't recognize her in a Starbucks. Okay?
Yeah.
I don't have any emotional attachment here at all. Okay? Now, it doesn't mean I'm not emotionally affected by the tragedy. I am, but I'm emotionally affected by the tragedy that this is horrible. Car crashed into a building, two people dead, the third person, barely survived. She's got this on her heart now. She's carrying the burden of these two people who lost their lives. Yeah, it sucks. I mean, is there anything about this situation that doesn't suck?
No.
But that's a leap. That's quite a leap from there to say, oh, she did it on purpose. She had motive, opportunity, and intent to do this. Meanwhile, she's belted into the car. Okay. She, as far as we were able to see, is following the law, following the speed limit, putting on her turn signal, being a responsible driver. And then all of a sudden, something changed. Now, that last sentence, did I say anything inaccurate in that last sentence?
No, you did not.
But we don't know what the something is, do we?
No, we don't.
We can guess, we can speculate, but based on everything that you've heard today and everything that you've seen today, and I know you're going to take time to investigate it yourself, and if you get an opportunity, you know somebody that has a Netflix account, I would encourage you to watch the documentary. It's very well done. So you're going to continue to investigate, but
Yeah.
At the end of the day, Richard, you and I arrive at the same place here, don't we?
I think
You
so.
you can't get to a murder. Okay, Richard Pettis, you're a juror. Okay, we're in court deliberations. I'm sorry, today is the day. I need a decision. I need a decision. Do you have a finding of guilty or finding of innocence? What or are you going to find this person guilty or are you going to acquit? You're a juror today,
I've got to acquit because I don't have enough evidence to find her guilty beyond a reasonable doubt.
and it's absolutely a slam dunk in my view. It's
Yeah.
absolutely a slam dunk. Okay. Now, some of
At
my
this point in
friends,
time, yeah.
some of my friends have pointed out that the documentary paints Mackenzie as a 17-year-old, self-absorbed, snotty, spoiled brat little teenager. Okay, okay, I'll buy that. I'm willing to sign up for all of that. Okay, how many 17-year-old, self-absorbed, snotty, immature teenagers have you known in your life? Quite a
Um,
few, probably. I'm
every
guessing.
single one.
What's that?
Every single 17-year-old girl I've ever met was a snotty
Okay,
self-absorbed.
okay. Are you able to get from there to murderer though? That's a
Pardon
big
me?
step, isn't it? I said,
Yeah.
are you able to get from there to murderer? That's a big step,
No,
right?
that's a big step. I'm not able to get to that point.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
I'm willing to listen and to try, but with what I've got in front of me right now, I don't have enough to convict an apple from falling off of a tree.
right. And what's really disturbing is that when you tell them, okay, all right, you say she did it, show me the evidence. Okay. And the argument that I made, the last argument that I made against these two, and they both told me I was dumb, I didn't know what I was talking about. Okay. I said, here's the problem that I have. You can't prove to me that Mackenzie was even controlling the vehicle when it hit the wall. You can't even prove that. Okay.
No,
Well, there goes the opportunity part, right? We talked about the three things: motive, opportunity, intent. Well, the opportunity thing's out the wheel, out the window. Because if she's not controlling the car, she doesn't have the opportunity, right? And
that's
then
exactly right.
I said that, and they told me I was off my nut. I didn't know what I was talking about. That nobody denies that she was operating the vehicle. And then this Netflix documentary comes out, and the investigators for the prosecution admitted for the cameras the exact thing that I've been arguing. Well, we think the steering wheel being grabbed to the right. We think the shifter, that was Dominic and Davion doing that. That's not my conclusion. That's the investigator's conclusion. Well, then I say, then we have a problem. You're telling me that at some point Dominic and Davion attempted to take control of this vehicle. Tell me at what point that was. Was it 3 seconds before impact? 5 seconds? 10 seconds? 14 seconds? Or 60 seconds? The answer to that question is a big deal, isn't it?
It is. It's a huge deal.
Okay. And then the second question is why? Did they take control of the car because she was trying to control the car? She was trying to wreck the car? Or did they take control of the car because she was incapacitated and unable to control the car? That also is a big, big question, isn't it?
It's a very big question.
And we don't know the answer to either one of those questions.
And
So,
according to Wikipedia, Nancy Margaret Russo is no relation.
okay. So why didn't they volunteer that information up front? Okay.
You know,
Because I think that was really unfair to the defendant to not volunteer that up front. So, Mackenzie is going into this wondering, is there some kind of a bias here? Okay. So, based on the fact that we don't know when the two victims tried to take control of the car, we don't know why they tried to take control of the car. I want to end it here. I want to end the program here. But Richard, just answer me this: how do you get to a murder conviction out of that? How do you get there?
you know, it's a good question. I can say this: she probably should not have been driving because they had been smoking marijuana prior to leaving the
Mm-hmm.
home of Paul Burlinghouse.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Negligence, certainly. Reckless driving, certainly. Driving under the influence, certainly. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But can you get to 2 counts of premeditated aggravated murder? I'm sorry, I can't.
I don't think so. I don't see how.
I can't get there. Now, uh, I know Christine Russo and Becky Russo, I know that you will listen to this. I know you will. I'm going to say it again. Every time I say it, you say I'm not sincere, but you don't know me. Okay. I truly am sorry for your loss. And I
As
say
am
that
I.
to the Flanagan family as well. I truly
In
grieve
fact,
for the losses.
let's pray a Hail Mary for the Flanagan and Russo families over their loss.
You lead.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary,
Holy
Mother of
Mary,
God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
So,
If that doesn't
I mean,
prove right there that we are legitimately sorry for your loss, I don't know what will.
right. Okay. And is there anything that we can say that makes this situation better? No, there
No,
isn't. We're not capable of taking away your pain. We're not
it's a
capable
bad
of bringing your life.
situation.
What's that?
It's a bad situation, and there's nothing
Yeah,
that's going to change that.
yeah. But there is a way to make this situation worse, though. There is a
Yes,
situation. There's no way to make it better, but there is a way to make it worse. And a way to make it worse is if you take this. If this was a horrible accident, which I believe that it was, there
yes,
was some irresponsible teenage behavior involved. But at the end of the day, if this was a horrible accident, as I believe that it was, then you add to the tragedy by taking an innocent person and sending her to prison for the rest of her life. That doesn't subtract from the tragedy. That doesn't make this less tragic. It makes it more tragic. Agree or disagree?
I agree.
And I think that's what happened here.
Absolutely agree.
So I'm sorry, Becky. I'm sorry, Christine. I know you don't agree. I know you feel strongly that Mackenzie murdered your brother and his friend. Um, and at the end of the day, you have every right to believe that. It's a free country. You have a right to believe that. Okay. And I can't say with 100.0000000% proof that you're wrong. I can say, honestly, I'm at about 95% that this was not murder. That's where I'm at. Richard, you might come up with a different number. I don't know. Um, but I'm at about 95% that this was not murder.
I'm
Um,
still at a 50-50 shot.
okay. All right.
I
Very
haven't
good.
heard I haven't heard enough evidence to prove that she did it, but I haven't heard enough evidence to prove that she didn't.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you what's going to shift you from 50% to 95%. Okay. Because
Okay.
all of the evidence that you've heard is all the evidence that you're ever going to hear. You're still waiting for something new, which is what I said. I said, okay, all right, listen, I can get there. If you want me to believe that she committed this murder, I can get there. But I can't get there with what you've given me so far. I got to have something more. You got to give me more than what I
Exactly.
have here. You agree with that, right?
Yes.
So if after 4 years they can't give you any more, and you ask them, you confront Christine and Becky, they're going to tell you the same thing, that she planned the route out, it was a toxic relationship, she did it just before her birthday, she threatened to crash the car. Wait a minute, all of those things have been debunked. All of those things have been disproven. Well, we know that she mashed the gas to the floor and that she intentionally drove the car straight into the building. Okay, no, a car did not go straight into the building. Okay, and all you can prove is that the car was at 100 miles an hour, but you can't prove how.
Mm-mm.
You can't prove what happened. Okay, at the end of the day, if they can't fill in any of those blanks for you, how are you going to get to murder, Richard? How are you going to get to a murder conviction? I don't see how it's possible. And again, I'm saying if they can't fill in those blanks, if they can fill in those blanks, now we're having a totally different conversation. But if they are
Exactly.
unable to fill in the blanks beyond what you know now, they're not able to provide anything more other than name calling and simply repeating the same things over and over again. So, can you get to a murder conviction? I can't.
No. I mean, I'm still at it's a crapshoot. I need to hear more to prove that she's innocent. I need to hear more to prove that she's guilty.
Yeah. And
But, I'm probably 70-30 against guilty,
yeah, when
just
you
based
say,
on what I've heard.
so let me clarify. I want to go back and clarify what you just said a minute ago.
Okay.
You're 50-50 in terms of your personal opinion as to whether or not you think she did this, right?
Correct.
Okay. But if I ask the question in a different way, if I ask the question is, what is your percentage that you believe the prosecution proved guilt beyond a reasonable doubt? What is that percentage? That's a
40%.
different number, isn't it? What's that?
That's a vastly different number.
I mean, what are we at? 20%? 10%?
Something like that.
Yeah. So this is what I said to Becky, and this is what I said to Christine. She might be guilty, okay? But our system of justice is predicated on the idea that it is better that 10 guilty people go free than one innocent person be locked away for a crime that she didn't commit.
Correct.
And that's where we're at here. And that's why this Netflix documentary made you so upset, Christine, because the facts don't support a murder conviction here. They just don't. And as much as you may be personally invested in believing that Mackenzie Sharilla killed your brother and his friend deliberately, as much as you intentionally, emotionally believe that, the prosecution did not prove that beyond a reasonable doubt. And the
No.
Netflix video proves that. And there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be pushing for an appeal. And if there is an appeal, if there is a trial, and they have that trial in front of a jury, by the way, the first appeal, tell me if this is regular. When they made the first appeal of the judge's ruling, the same judge got to hear the appeal. The same judge ruled on the appeal of her own verdict. Is
Um,
that normal?
as a general rule, not in Georgia or Alabama, but I don't know the law in Ohio and how they do it. I'm wondering if it wasn't a motion for a new trial or a motion to set aside and retry.
Yeah, it was
And
a
if it was a
motion for a new
motion to
trial.
set aside or a motion uh, for a new trial, then that might be heard by the trial judge.
Right.
I know in Georgia and Alabama it would be.
Now,
If, on the
let me
other hand, it's a formal appeal to the next level, then it would go in Georgia, it would go to the Court of Appeals. In Alabama, it would go to the Alabama Supreme Court.
yeah. Anyway, on that note, we're going to sign off for the day. God bless you, everyone, and take care and have a blessed weekend.
All right, everybody have a great, blessed weekend. God knows that you're good, and if ain't nobody told you today that they love you, we do.
God bless. I'll see you.